Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be discussing my Seiko 5KX modifications. As you can see, I've removed the standard 5KX bezel and I've replaced it with a bezel and bezel insert from namokimods.com. The bezel is called their sub bezel and it's available in two versions, mirror polished and also sandblasted finish. This is the sandblasted finish, which has a matte finish. As you can see, it's satin finish. And the bezel insert is called their black base steel insert, and as you can see it's the same style as the Tudor black base steel bezel insert, so made from 316L grade stainless steel. So I'll give you some tips if you want to complete this modification yourself, and I'll show you the tools I use. Now with regards to prices, the sub bezel insert from Namoki Mods is €38 and the black base steel bezel insert is €26 respectively. So I'll talk you through how I did it and the tools I used. This is the standard 5KX bezel and bezel insert. As you can see, I removed them in one piece. Now if you look closely at the underside, you can see there is no damage, there is no marks, no scuffs, no scratches or dents. And although I used the standard method, which is a case back knife, I was able to remove it without doing any damage, and I'll show you how I did that. Before removing a bezel from a watch case, I highly recommend that you protect the case with tape. Personally, I prefer to use electrical insulating tape because it's quite thick, thicker than sellotape or polyamide tape respectively. So I put this on the top edge of the case, and the electrical insulating tape protects it from any scuffs or scratches from the case back knife, and this is the case back knife I use, as you can see. Now before using the case back knife to prise off the bezel from the case, I recommend that you put it inside a resealable plastic bag like this. And the resealable plastic bag has the effect of blunting the sharp edge of the case back knife, and that means that the edge of the case back knife doesn't dig into the top edge of the case, nor does it dig into the underside of the bezel itself. I've often seen videos where collectors modify Seiko watches. They use this case back knife and they dig it into the top edge of the case and they dig it into the underside of the bezel when they prise the bezel off the case, and inevitably they dent and scuff the top edge of the case, and they also dent and scuff the underside of the bezel. So by using the electrical insulating tape and also putting it inside a resealable plastic bag, you prevent this happening. And as I've discussed, I was able to remove it without any damage. Now with regards to the correct points to prise off an SKX bezel, or alternatively an SRPD 5KX bezel like this, the bezel click spring has 2 points. The spring has a point at the 12 o'clock position and the 6 o'clock position, so you want to avoid putting in the case back knife at the underneath the bezel at the 6 and 12 o'clock positions. I find the best positions are either the 10-minute mark or the 50-minute mark. So what I do is I put the case back knife in the plastic bag and then I slide it at the 10-minute position underneath the bezel and then gradually prise it with even pressure, and it has the effect of popping the bezel off the case. Now sometimes it takes a couple of attempts, but it will eventually pop off, and you have to use quite a lot of force, which is precisely why you use the electrical insulating tape to protect the case and why you use the resealable plastic bag, because with that force it's easy to dig in the edge of the blade into the top edge of the case and the underside of the bezel, but by protecting it with plastic you avoid that happening. Now the other tip I'll give you is, before attempting this, I recommend you purchase a set of these 3M adhesive rings. These are specifically die cut to fit the SKX size, which is 38mm. Now I purchased a set of 10 of these from eBay from a seller called Edward Ianin, and he sells a set of 10 of these for £12 including shipping, which is very reasonable. And they're precision die cut to the correct size for both the bezel and the insert itself. So the way you use them is, before fitting the bezel, you lay the circle of adhesive ring on top of the bezel like this, and then you push the center section, the center circle, through the bezel, and because it's precision die cut, it breaks it, and the center circle will pop out through the hole in the center, and then you'll be left with just the adhesive ring itself, which is coated with protective paper. And then I use either a 1mm screwdriver, alternatively you can use an X-Acto knife or a scalpel to pick off the protective ring of paper, and that just leaves the adhesive ring itself, which is very sticky. So then you can press on the bezel onto the case and you have the adhesive ring already in place. This is far easier than trying to lay on the adhesive ring with the crystal in the centre. So the first thing to do is put the adhesive ring on first, press on the bezel and then fit the bezel insert after. Now this is my Zacro crystal press. Now the intended purpose of this crystal press, as the name suggests, is for removing and refitting sapphire crystals in watches, and I've used this over the years on a number of occasions to refit sapphire crystals, and it works very well because it has different sized nylon dies which screw on. As you can see, they have a brass threaded centre section which screws onto a spigot on the base and also another spigot on the top, and I'll just show you. They unscrew from the spigot very easily. And the brass is threaded very well. It's a good tight fit onto the spigot. If you look at the plunger, you can see there's a threaded spigot that the die screws onto. So they work very well. There's various sizes for different size sapphire crystals and cases. Now in order to get it to the correct height, I put one die on top of the other, as you can see, and then I sat the 5KX, the watch, onto the lower bezel, and that meant that I could put the bezel on and then press down gradually with even pressure. It's nice and controlled, and this works far better. I've often seen videos where collectors try to press on the bezel using their two thumbs. The problem with doing that is you're applying pressure on 2 points using your thumbs, trying to get it to snap onto the case. And what you're doing is you're actually deforming the bezel and bezel insert by applying pressure on 2 points rather than evenly 360 degrees around the bezel. By using this die, as you can see, when you press down with a die, you're applying even pressure all the way around the 360 degrees, as you can see. And that means the bezel and bezel insert aren't deformed. They're getting a nice even push all the way around the circumference, and one can easily press it down with a nice controlled fashion, and you'll feel a click, a nice positive click, and also you'll hear a loud audible click when it's engaged. It snaps on with a nice positive click, and then you can release, and you can then check that it's fitted correctly by rotating the bezel. So let's test the bezel action and we'll see how it is compared to the original. Perfect. It's got a nice even feeling all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation as per the original 5KX bezel. This is something I particularly like about NamokiMods.com bezels, is they are machined to the same high standards as Seiko bezels. The ratcheting mechanism feels identical to the original 5KX bezel. Nice firm resistance to it, it's even. No lateral side-side play whatsoever. No back play whatsoever. So you cannot discern the difference between the two. They feel exactly the same. Let's check the alignment. Perfect. So the loom pip and triangle perfectly aligns with the chapter ring and also the 12 o'clock index on the dial. Perfect alignment. And this is what I like about Namoki Mods. One doesn't have any quality control or builds quality issues. They're finished to a very high standard and they really fit very well. This one snapped on first time with a nice positive click, and I rotated it a couple of times to check the ratcheting spring mechanism, and from the first rotation it felt exactly the same as the original. I knew it had fitted correctly, and also rotated it a couple of times. So I'll do it again just to check it. I rotated it a couple of times through the 360 degrees to confirm the bezel alignment was correct with 120 clicks. That's the final click. Perfect. So the loom pip and triangle align correctly. No lateral side-side play, no back play. So very easy modification to do if you have the correct tools. And I would say to you, don't attempt doing this without a Zacro crystal press from Amazon, electrical insulating tape to protect the case, a case back knife inside a resealable plastic bag, as I've discussed, and lastly, purchase a set of spare 3M adhesive rings, because you may not get it correct the first time and therefore you may have to remove the bezel insert from the bezel, and I've already discussed using the acetone method to dissolve the adhesive ring. The adhesive rings dissolve very quickly in acetone. If you soak the watch face down in acetone for 1 hour, it melts the adhesive ring, and then what you can do is you can just rotate the bezel insert and then peel it off using an X-Acto knife or a scalpel tip just to prise it off, and that means you won't damage the bezel or the bezel insert. I've previously removed several ceramic bezel inserts, which are very difficult to remove from bezels without damaging them, without cracking them. And by using the acetone method, you dissolve the adhesive ring and the ceramic bezel will peel off without any damage. You don't have to flex it when you're prising it off. So that's what I recommend. Purchase a set of 3M adhesive rings, and then you'll have some spares in case you don't get the alignment correct and you have to peel it off and reset it. Sometimes it can take 2 or 3 times to get it correct. I was lucky this time when I put it on, I got the alignment perfectly correct the first time round. But as you'll know from my previous reviews, when I modified my Pagani Design PD1694mm sub, I wasn't happy with the depth of the bezel insert and also wasn't happy with the alignment. It just wasn't perfectly correct, so I needed to remove it and redo it again, and I got it right the second time round. So that's all I have to say with regards to my Seiko 5KX modifications. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.